I had a knife in my sock, which I carried around with me, pulled it from my sock and brandished it. But I swung that knife and I hit the man in the chest. I admittedly was in a fit of rage at that point. I was told that one of the men tragically succumbed to a single stab wound to the heart. As a result, I spent 28 years of my life incarcerated. My life was basically over. So greetings and salutations to all of you. My name is Victor DeSordi, and welcome to my channel 28 to Persevere, the title of which is self-explanatory. It explains my not only ability and desire to persevere through what I went through, but the 28 years that it took to get to this point in my existence on this incredible journey here. I'm going to explore further my crime. I would like to elaborate briefly now and much further down the road what I went through. We'll get into that in detail. My crime itself, which occurred on October 8th, 1994, in upstate New York. I was a 19-year-old child at the time, highly inebriated, partying a lot. My man lived a style of life that all my friends called Vic's World. It was just wild. I was a wild kid. I was out of control, not violent or anything of that nature. Just, I had fun, man. I was just all about the adrenaline of the moment. I was a party animal. There wasn't a keg party I didn't entertain going to or explore entertaining. I loved that life, man. I loved partying. I loved drinking, and I was an acid head. I loved dropping acid, and I loved that to a large extent. At that point, 19 years old, I dropped out of school. I mean, I was a big football junkie. Played football. I loved it. Big horror fan, fanatic, as you could tell from my background here. But, at that point in my life, I was having a lot of fun. I was just a kid exploring the unknown, trying to get my level of testosterone in check, being 19 years of age. But I was out partying with my friends. And we went to a 6K toga party, though I wasn't wearing a toga. But it was late that night, and we were leaving the party, and I was walking my friends to the car with my lady friend at the time. It was about 5 of us in the group, and we were walking through a dark alley. There was a parking lot behind the apartment where the party was taking place. And as we were walking through the alley, a truck and a car came around the bend, perpendicular to where we were walking out of. And the truck, which was in the lead, slammed on its brakes, as did the car behind it. A man exited the vehicle and ran beeline towards me, hollering, screaming, belligerently, actually, and immediately shoved me. Started screaming about somebody throwing something at his truck. Obviously, I didn't throw anything at his truck. I was walking out of a alleyway with my lady friend, and he kept shoving me and screaming at me, throwing that something at his truck, and just, very loud, aggressive. And now, granted, at that moment, I was inebriated. Spent the night drinking. I dropped acid. I was on the head of a LSD. At this point, 2 other men exited the vehicle that was parked directly behind the truck, and they also stood near the man. Literally, like, he was directly in front of me, and the other 2 guys were to the left and the right. He continued to push and accuse me of throwing something. I continued to state I didn't. At that point, my lady friend tried to intervene, get it between us to try to stop it. I stuck my hand out, told the guy, listen, man, I don't even know you. Can't we be friends? All of which came out during the trial, subsequently. As my lady friend tried to intervene, one of the other two men, nobody knows which one, it was never actually revealed, grabbed my lady friend by the side of her face and shoved her out of the way, and she fell. That was when I pushed the man from the truck. Consequently, he and I then started throwing fisticuffs. At that point, another one of the men who exited the car that was standing next to that man swung and connected, punched, hit me on the side. The man in the truck and I, we then engaged. I fell to the ground with him. At one point during this ruckus that turned into a pure and utter uncontrolled chaos, I had a knife in my sock, which I carried around with me to clean my bowl. I smoked a lot of weed, as stated previously. I pulled it from my sock and brandished it in a defensive move to engage with who I felt was the assailant, and I was in fear for my life at that time. Being a child doesn't excuse my reaction and pointing the knife and engaging as I did. But I swung that knife and I hit the man in the chest. Single stab wound. At that point, one of the men jumped on me also, and I was told later on through trials and eyewitness accounts that the third man was trying to push my head into the ground or get on top of me. Like I said, it was all blurry. It was so chaotic and just it's horrific. It's horrific. But at some point, the second man and I then engaged in a fight from the ground, and I latched onto his neck, bite his throat. At this point, there were bystanders that were brought down from the party we were in from all the noise. So they engaged, and some of them pulled me off the man, supposedly. I admittedly was in a fit of rage at that point, and I was covered in blood. Didn't know if it was my own or any of the victims. My lady friend quickly rushed me from the scene. I was in a daze, confused, completely out of sorts, from what I can recall. And was brought to my lady friend's apartment immediately, which she lived near the apartment that we were previously at with the party. She tried to clean me up the best she could and just get my bearings back, because I was totally out of it, dazed and confused in every sense of the word. I don't know if I previously stated it, but I had no idea who these men were. I couldn't point them out of a lineup. It was tragic in every sense of the word. This entire horrific event was just tragic for everyone involved. I mean, the victims far exceed even just the people that night that were involved, and that are still feeling the ramifications of that night, myself included. My lady friend cleaned me up the best she could. She called my mother, my aunt, to try to get them to the apartment. They lived about an hour away, not even, because they saw that, wanted to see what was going on. And we could see the actual crime scene from our apartment, because there was cops and ambulance came. And, after I was cleaned up and given a fresh shirt because I was covered in someone's blood, when I realized it wasn't my own, my mother and aunt showed up, and we discussed the possibility of me going downstairs and speaking to the officers who were there at the time, police, which was my idea at that time in my life. We weren't too familiar with the what I call the injustice system, because that's what it is. So I had almost a formal trust that I could go down there and speak to them, because I didn't know that anyone was fatally wounded. I knew I no longer had the knife in my hand. I lost it somewhere along the line during the course of the fight. But I knew I was involved in the fight, and I was accountable for being there. And, you know, we had the trust that I would go down there and speak to the officers and try to clear it up and find out the results of what happened and the conditions of the other men. Because I was concerned and confused that I didn't really understand the severity of what took place. But the choice was mine to go down there, and I did. We went down there. I walked up to the nearest officer and introduced who I was, explained that I was involved in an altercation. He then read me my Miranda rights and brought me into the back of his car. I still at this point did not know that anyone was fatally wounded. I was brought to the precinct, which was in the small town where this took place in upstate New York. And after a long process throughout the night of questioning and trying to find out what was going on, and I was told about, that one of the man in the truck, tragically succumbed to a single stab wound to the heart. I was devastated. I mean, it still am, will always be. It was nothing that was premeditated or something that I desired to happen, but it did happen. And as a result, I spent 28 years of my life incarcerated. The night that happened, violence or fighting or anything of that nature was the farthest thing from my mind. I just wanted to have fun, wanted to go out and party, But my choices, I did have a knife in my sock, excuse me. I was in that moment, 3 a.m. I remember my grandfather, great man, rest his soul. He's a great man. He told me a long time ago, if you're out at 3 a.m., nothing good usually happens. And, he was a wise man, that's for sure. So after I was notified of such and I was booked, I never saw the streets again until I was almost 48 years old. We'll go through the process here, I'll answer any questions anyone has or further elaborate. I'm just giving you a brief intro into what took place that night, and I would gladly, not so much gladly, but I will be honest and an open book. I have nothing to hide or run from, as I fear not the consequences of my actions. I embrace the opportunity to share insight into who I am as a man at this stage of my life and who I was as the 19-year-old boy, from what I can recall. But that night was tragic beyond words and incomprehensible that someone died, and it will never be something that you get over. You're responsible for taking a human life, and the second man was also severely injured. He did suffer the abrasion of his neck from my biting in the mark. He did suffer a single stab wound also to punctured his lung. Thankfully, he did not succumb. I suffered abrasions in my hands, my arms, from the ground, and I did have an abrasion above my eye because allegedly one of the men had a key in between his fingers, and he swung and tried to take my eye out allegedly. As I said, it was all blurred to me personally, but there were eyewitnesses that testified to this. I was in the county jail for almost a year. I lost almost 40 pounds. I wasn't eating. I was going through a deep depression, stressed, not understanding what was going on, what my fate would be. I was a ship without a rudder. And I had to really embrace what it took to wake up each day not knowing if I would have a future. I was 19 years old, and, to comprehend what a 19-year-old's going through with his sensibilities at that point, it's night and day compared to how my ability to process information now and to understand the ramifications of your actions at this point and everything that unfolded subsequently as a result of those actions when you're 19 years old. No excuses. I would never sugarcoat or downplay anything I have done. I've always taken full responsibility for my actions and for the man I am today. I don't hide or run from any self-exploratory adventure about revealing who I am. And to have the opportunity to share that with all of you, I think at this stage in my life, it's truly a gift to do so. And there's a purpose behind everything. Even the horrific experiences. It's something that has given me a chance to show that to suffer in vain is the worst fate of all. And that I did not. And that perhaps all my family that have also suffered did not suffer in vain. That now I have a chance to elaborate on what took place. And all the subsequent years of the horror show that I went through in the abyss against the uncontrollable forces of chaos and negativity that surrounded me every day of my life inside the prison system, especially during the early years of adapting and surviving, trying to understand who I was. When you're 19, you don't really know who you are. You think you know. You think you got it all figured out. I mean, all kids do. I mean, some older people think that they have it all figured out. They really don't. And even now, I mean, I admit I'm a student of life. Every day I learn and explore and develop and embrace the changing tides of understanding. I live in a concrete world where in my brain I'm just set in stone, everything. Nah, every day is something new and something to explore and understand. And I'm grateful for that chance. Every day, we learn and we adjust and we explore, and we've come to familiarize ourselves with ourselves. And that's what I'm doing here right now. And what happens tomorrow, who knows? I mean, all I know is that holding on to my humanity, embracing the sanctity of everyday existence now, is an opportunity to explore further what it took to understand and be the man I am today. And we're going to explore that. We're going to explore some of the worst things I've ever seen in prison. We're going to explore what I did the first week of my incarceration, from the county jail to my first week in the prison systems, through reception, which is what you initially go through when you go upstate, as they called it, in prison, from the county jail to the prison systems, which there's a transition, huge, more ways than one. County jails are like nursery schools compared to the prison systems. We're going to explore my ability to adjust to prison, what it took, how I made the best use of my time, my devotion to physical fitness. I was up to 250 pounds, a mass monster, worked out every day. I went to prison with weighing 170 as a 19-year-old. I lost tremendous weight, as I stated previously, in the county jail. When I finally left the county jail, I was like 170 and filled with frustration, depression, anger, rage, uncertainty, fear. And we're going to explore what it took for me to confront that and the uncertainties of prison life, especially that first week. We didn't know if I would have a life because I was focusing on merely existence, which I learned to adapt to and understood the value of survival and how my life and the value of it transcended my own interpretation of it. And that every step that I took, every action that I made, the ramifications of it reverberated far beyond the prison walls. My family, my friends. I wasn't alone, though. I was surrounded by steel, in the concrete and asphalt jungle that I lived in every day, where there was no empathy or sense of humanity. So my emphasis was to hold on to that and understanding where I needed to be and who I needed to identify with every day, to explore that, adjusting to prison life and going through all the various stages of despair that a person goes through. I won't shy away from talking about that. As I said before, I'm an open book to that. I'm not going to sit here and glorify anything that the mainstream might glorify or disparage, and because of the form of ignorance. I'm going to say things from the heart, be a straight shooter when it comes to life in there. It was horrific, and there's nothing to say that can downplay the significance of how utterly horrific it was. It's a shit show in every sense of the word, and I'm going to talk about that and answer any questions. I'm open to what anyone has to say. It's an amazing thing, it really is. To be here right now, as I stated earlier, we're going to explore prison gangs. It's huge. It's a huge thing. I can state emphatically that I was never part of a gang or anything of such, but I was familiar with them, many of them. Became good friends with a lot of the guys. Various gangs, black, Spanish, white, whatever, Indian, Asians. There's an element here, to explore because of the mainstream propaganda of understanding. People always were fascinated with my ability to really connect with various people of all walks of life, and what I had to do to get there. Of course, there's the tests, and I'm going to tell you stories about some of the things I had to go through as a child, especially being a white kid who looked like he was 12 when I first went to prison. And back in those days, it wasn't as regulated as I believe it is now, with the cameras and social media, people highlighting things that happen to people in prisons. But back in those days, in the 90s and the early 2000s, especially young people my age usually were sent to prisons where between the ages of 16 and 19, there's a prison in upstate New York called Coxsackie, and that's where a lot of the young men would go to. And between the ages of 16 and 19, for some reason I did not, and I was sent to Auburn, my first max prison at 19. I was one of the youngest guys in that prison, and there's 1,800 men in that prison, and I'll never forget that first week, because there was nobody my age there, that's for sure. And there's a lot of horrific things that people see there, a lot of horrific things that I saw personally, I had to go through. And I'm not going to be shy about talking about it. It might be offensive to some and might fascinate others. And, it's something that you do when you first go to prison that the common man or woman would never really truly comprehend. Being put in the positions that I was in, and the courage to confront the unknown was an everyday walk of life. You had to have the intestinal fortitude to embrace that will to persevere and not be manhandled by the world around you. And I refused to be a victim when I went in there, though I was vulnerable to the possibility of being so. I never truly felt that I would be victimized. And there was horrific things that happened to men and young boys in prisons, as you can imagine. I can state emphatically I was never sexually assaulted or anything of that nature. because I understood also that I had the veneer of aggression, and I was willing at that point, especially the early stages, the early years. I was willing to do whatever I had to do to survive, and I felt that um, my life was basically over. 19 years old, I didn't think I had a life, and I figured somebody would take me out anyway. Being young, white, I was not in my environment per se, my comfort zone, and I had to really formulate a plan strategically to present an image that I was willing to take it to the next level, and I wasn't afraid to die. Uh, I embraced the opportunity to show that I'm going to survive. It was a challenge, and I'm always competitive by nature. So even at that stage of my life, I didn't have anything else to rely on. I love my family, more than anything in this world, and my friends, but they weren't there. They didn't live my life, and they weren't going to protect me. There was nobody looking out for me. There was nothing like that. When I got thrown into the wolves, you become a lion, and you have to be. You have to be. You have to think like a lion. You can't, think any other way. It's just the way it is. You realize most of them are jackals. Most people are jackals inside the prison system, and you have to be that lion. Sometimes you have to have the mentality, even if you don't forcefully go out with the intention of engaging in violent altercations or anything of that nature. But there are moments that I had to show that I could be a lion. I wasn't going to be a lamb, that's for sure. So we're going to explore that. We're going to get deeper into that type of mentality. We're going to talk about the prison food, which was absolutely atrocious. Just horrific in every sense of the word. I have a lot of gastrointestinal problems to this day, and I truly believe it's because of the food that I was subjected to eating and the contaminants and carcinogenic things that were in the food. That was no doubt. A lot of men that I know are suffering health issues to this day because of the food, the quality or lack thereof that we were subjected to, along with the water that was filled with rust and horrific, especially in Auburn. Auburn's a cesspool in every sense of the word, I stated earlier. Well, we're going to go through that. We're going to talk about all this. There's a lot of things we're going to go through. We're going to talk about how acclimating to everyday life was a process, and I'll elaborate on that process. Each time we'll talk more and more about it, and I'm just looking forward to the journey. And I just hope that you're all there with me every step of the way. And whatever I can say or do or give of myself that will help further strengthen you, I'll do so. I believe it's an honor on my end to be here in this position. It's a responsibility that I don't take lightly. As I stated earlier, I'm grateful for the chance and the opportunity to do this. And if given an opportunity as I have now been given, I'm going to make the best of it and the most of it, and be better for it. And in the process, hopefully I can help you guys. That's what it's about, man. This is all about now. It's about living, man. It's about living and understanding that you have to learn to live again. That's my mind. That was my mindset. I never knew how to live after I got home. I mean, I've been home almost 3 years, and I'm still adjusting to life, learning to live. I mean, family members, my wife in particular, reminds me all the time, don't always have to be hyper vigilant. Vic, you can relax and, just go through the days and, be lazy if you want. It's okay. Because I was so hyper vigilant for so long, I didn't know anything else. It was just hyper vigilance, being on point, watch my back, look both ways, and I'm still to a large extent like that. It's hard to relax sometimes, especially in crowds. Though I can embrace a hardcore metal band concert. I mean, I love the rock festivals. I jumped in my first pit over the summer, Rockville in Oklahoma. It's a 3-day metal fest. Fantastic. I love that. Did that with my daughter. I actually jumped in 3 pits, one of which I started. So the mosh pits is was great. I never felt any type of way. I mean, there's an etiquette there that I embraced, so that was great. I'm a big metalhead, so I love my music. That kept me sane in prison. I'm gonna tell you a lot about that, about how my music and how I had access to cassette tapes, which I'm sure is foreign to most people in today's day and age. But I had my cassette tapes and my headphones, and that really was therapeutic in its own way. I was a connoisseur for literature. I read everything, not merely fiction. I love nonfiction and history and science and exploring the psychology and philosophy. I love my fiction too. I'm a big horror junkie, as stated earlier, so I read a lot, explored that, understanding. I'm going to tell you about my exercising, what I did there, and how I formulated a plan, and I'll tell you about the weight courts, especially in the Auburn, what that even means. We're going to really dive deep here. Deep dive into Vic's world. So welcome. Thank you. And until we meet again, go with the gods. Persevere.